So, welcome back to the Prescription to Travel MD podcast, the show where we talk about all things travel and how to truly travel better and create the travel life of your dreams. And so, for many of us, this means being able to have control over our time as well as our finances. And as physicians and healthcare professionals, it can sometimes be challenging to do both, which is why I'm loving what our next guest is bringing to the table. Dr. Naomi Lawrence-Reid, known to many in the physician community, is teaching others how to approach medicine differently and create a life that allows you to achieve both of these things. And she's here to tell us a little bit about her journey and how you can create your own path. She also shares my love of travel, and I'm excited to hear about her journey and the doors that open for her and how they could be open to you as well. So, welcome to the show, Naomi.
Thank you for having me.
So, I'd love it if you could start by telling us a little bit about your journey, a pediatrician, and how you transitioned into entrepreneurship and being able to teach financial freedom to physicians.
That's correct. As you said, I'm a general pediatrician. I am from the Boston area. I finished medical school in 2011 and I did a general pediatrics residency. I finished in 2014 in New York City. And at that point, in residency as a peds resident, I thought clinical medicine, I was taught clinical medicine was all that there was. And at the time, I really enjoyed working in the pediatric ER. And so when I finished residency, I got a job. I moved to San Diego and simply started working in the pediatric ER as a generalist while I was considering applying to fellowship. But I really just wanted to live in Southern California at that point. And in those first few years of working in that job, I was truly deeply miserable. I was a little under 3 years out of residency when I decided to quit that job. The story's a little funny. There was one of those kind of last straw, final straw moments where after nearly 3 years of, nights, weekends, holidays, no autonomy, not being able to dictate or control my schedule at all. As a pediatrician, my starting salary was $125,000 and I had loans and debt and was living in Southern California in a very expensive, cost of living space. So one night I walked into a shift and the armrest of one of our office chairs, the one that was available, was broken off. So there were just kind of shards of metal shooting up and a Post-it note on the computer says, admin's aware. They're working on it. And so I said, okay. So I do my shift. I hold my arm kind of close to my torso so I'm not being impaled by the metal pieces. I do my shift. We all know how important our notes are. That's how everyone in healthcare gets paid. So that's how I did my notes that shift. I leave. I assume, my next shift, there'll be a new office chair that runs maybe $80, $90. I come back, and instead of a new office chair, the administration had wrapped diapers around the broken metal pieces of the chair.
Seriously?
Yes, yes. And in that moment, I stood there maybe 10 or 15 seconds, and I just felt all the feels of, okay, this is my worth and value to this department. Now, be it wasn't my office, it was a shared physician office, right? So this was happening to all of us. But to me, the disrespect felt so very loud in that moment. And I submitted my letter of resignation that night. And I did not have a good plan. I did not have a plan. I just want to be clear. Was not stepping into, a large inheritance or, windfall of cash or money. But I just knew I couldn't stay there. So I put in my letter of resignation and I found a per diem job in town. And that is all I knew to do. I'd heard about locums. I'll get there. But at that point, per diem was just enough. It gave me enough. It paid me enough. I felt like I could breathe, but it was really my next best step out of full-time clinical medicine.
Wow. How symbolic is that, though? I think that's what so many of us as physicians, probably people in other professions as well, but specifically within the physician community are facing, to go in and just have that broken chair, having a broken system, and they just put a diaper on it. That's the bandage. They put a diaper on it and they don't fix the problem. And so as physicians, we're left to figure it out on our own, how to transition out of this environment that they've created, how to not get impaled by the chair.
I tell this story pretty frequently when I talk to other physicians, and I never thought of it that way. But you're absolutely right. It's a very apt analogy for the state of healthcare. You are right.
They don't care about you. They don't care about your team. Not to say that they don't care about people individually, but as a whole, like the system doesn't care.
They don't individually, as a whole, everything in between.
I was trying to be politically correct.
I could tell. I'll say it then.
But yeah, so I think being able to create your own destiny, and I know that sounds like poetic, but really like create the life that you want outside of medicine is so very important.
Exactly, and, as I'll speak more about what I do and how I've arrived here, I have to think so many physicians, we just feel so stuck, right? Because we are used to being spoon-fed information, and we were very intentionally not fed information about working independently or advocating for ourselves or negotiating or how to get your own health insurance or malpractice, or we simply weren't. And so many of us feel like just sitting ducks, just, I can't, I need the monthly salary that I get. How could I even tolerate the quote unquote instability, or what would a transition even look like? So I'll just say I did not have a great plan, but I had to hold on to the fact that we are doctors. And somehow we've been made to feel like if you leave a full-time clinical job, you're just falling off a cliff. You're falling off a career cliff. You can never come back. There's nothing else out there. You'll fail. And it's just like, of nearly every profession on earth, we have jobs that are never going away. So we'll always have at least that bedrock of stability.
Yeah, sometimes it does feel like if you lose this, then what next? Like there's nothing else out there for me. So I love that you have created this platform where you're showing people the way that, hey, there is something else out there for you. And I'm an example of what can be, even if you don't have a plan. So you didn't have a plan and you quit and you went per diem.
Right. And it's like, I didn't have a plan, but now I do have a plan. Like in retrospect, I have made my journey, I think, a great plan for many doctors, but I'll get there. So I went per diem. And again, that was hourly work. I got my own health insurance. I had an accountant. So I just kind of figured out how to move things over. Again, not a big plan, but enough. I think that there's so many doctors who stay in bad jobs just because it's about, what does my malpractice look like? What does my health insurance look like? What does my retirement look like? And since we probably will never become experts in those things, we just feel like it'll be easier to stay. Anyway, I just had to go. Had to go. The per diem job, again, paid me hourly, but my total income never dropped below what it was for me in full-time clinical medicine. It never, ever did. But as a per diem, I was able to select the shifts I picked up or decided to either work a lot or work a little or take some time away. So per diem is such a regular thing, of course, in the nursing community. But as doctors, it's like, oh, you better have a good reason for going per diem. Why aren't you full-time? And that's not it is. In fact, I want every doctor to be part-time or per diem by like 5 years into their clinical career. It's great. You're still a doctor. You're still practicing clinically. You just have time, and we all need that. Felt like I could inhale and just survey my career in that per diem job. From there, I started looking at locums jobs. And by the end of residency, the gist and the advice was, oh, don't even pick up when a recruiter calls. They're so pushy. You'll be in the middle of nowhere working a contract that you've gotten tricked into. By the way, real doctors, they don't do that. Real doctors are full-time clinical, academic, professorship, partnership models. And so that was my teaching, probably many of our teachings as well, or at least that was the assumption. But I thought, no, like these numbers sound good. I'm going to try it because we can try it. Like these contracts are very short term. If you don't like it, you don't have to go back. Started doing a little bit of locums in 2017 and in 2018 and thought, okay, so much more negotiable. I'm in California, so I was able to actually stay in California, drive to a number of these sites. Ended up kind of doing one very consistently for over 5 years. Was able to, again, negotiate high rates, first through a locums agency, then got them out of there, worked directly with the hospital. But I'll say for me, it was life-changing in terms of just my income. That was honestly able to fund a lot of my travels, which I'll get to. At the same time I was starting locums, I also discovered, this is 2018, that any physician could do aesthetics. And here I was, in the peds ER suturing children's faces, but thinking I couldn't do Botox or fillers. Turns out I can. So took a number of classes and started a concierge Botox and filler practice. And then into 2020, I was very shocked. I was doing so well with the per diem, the locums, aesthetics. I tried to roll back the aesthetics. Obviously, we were in a pandemic. But everything else, I was able to go to this locum site. It was somewhat rural and still provide patient care, always had PPE. I mean, they laser printed, a visor and mask with, my initials on it. They were so glad I was there. It was such a good experience. And by the end of 2020, I began to think, oh, wow, I think I figured something else out here. Like, I'm watching my friends and colleagues drown in the pandemic in these full-time academic clinical positions. We all assumed they'd be taken care of, backed up, supported. I think most of us learned that was not the case. And so that was when I first had the idea for doctoring differently.
So tell us a little bit about doctoring differently.
Sure. So I just thought, this is a different way to work as a doctor. I think it's a better way, but it's a different way. It's not the full way we were taught. And at that point, I was doing locums and per diem and aesthetics. Into 2021, I started exploring veteran disability exams. It turns out any physician of any specialty can do veteran disability, including this pediatrician. I had no idea, but began doing that and earning a lot of money. And honestly, made me a better doctor. I really enjoyed talking to veterans. It's non-clinical, non-diagnostic, non-treatment, but I really enjoyed that work. Soon after that, I started working as a medical expert witness. I began doing Social Security adjudications. I began doing some independent telemedicine and medical writing. And as you can probably tell, I developed a real intoxication with finding out what else my medical degree and my license can do for me. That, of course, we are not taught or exposed to anytime in training.
I feel like as physicians, we get pigeonholed and we feel like you can't go anywhere because I feel like I've told myself that many times, or at least once upon a time I did. Like I would have conversations with nurses and I'm like, oh, it's so nice because you're a nurse, but you can work in the ER here, or you can go work in the cath lab, or you can become a nurse practitioner. You can do all these different things. But, I did a residency and I'm not going back to residency. And that's all I saw. And I'm sure there are so many physicians who feel the same because you don't know the options that are out there because, you're like, I've dedicated all this time to my craft, to doing this thing, and this is the thing that I'm gonna do. And it doesn't have to be that way, and it doesn't make you less of a doctor. Like, you're still a physician, you still the MD, but just know that you can do other things. Like, if you can train others to do Botox and do injections, if you're a family medicine or a pediatrician or whatever your specialty may be, you can do those things too. Like, there's no reason you can't, you know?
You nailed it. I always go back to our training, but I now use the word grooming. I'm glad you have this platform and I have mine, and that there's so much more discussion that, listen, our medical education, there is a large piece of it missing. Again, intentionally and by design. We make a lot of money. We earn a lot of money for this healthcare system here. Our labor earns all of it. So why would they expose us to ways that we can make our own money? Very smart, very diabolical on their part. And for us, our currency is education. So we think that, we spent 20, 30 years going to school to learn, quote unquote, one thing, which is clinical medicine and our specialty. We think, okay, I got to go back to school to learn some other trade or craft or skill. I also had those thoughts going through my mind. Do I do another residency? Do I do a fellowship? Do I get an MBA? Do I need another degree? We all do it. We all do it. And we get the flyers in the mail for the Stanford Executive MBA program. Like, we all get them. And it goes through our minds. Okay, maybe an MBA will be the thing that saves my career, that gives me what I want. But in fact, no. We are doctors. Like, we are really smart. And most education, you just can't learn in a classroom. And a lot of these things, you do not need an MBA to own business, to run a business, to acquire a business. Absolutely not. So into 2021, I just thought, okay, I think I have something I can teach doctors. Like, my travel game we are still pandemic era here, so no one's really traveling. But in that time in 2021, I began to think, okay, I think that this is something that can apply to doctors of all specialties. I feel like I had cracked a code of at least having a number of things that we can do. This is in 2021, but also how to get your health insurance and all of those other things that really keep good doctors in bad jobs. So in 2021, I launched Doctoring Differently as a course that I taught live for physicians across the US. It was a 6-week course, and I went through kind of step by step how I did what I did and how they could too. And my first student was my own PCP, but that is a whole other podcast episode. And she was also the first person to quit her job and do incredible other things, leaving me without a PCP, but that's okay. I found another one. And I taught at Life for 2 years. I've since then recorded it as a digital course as I continue to expand the platform to over 25 different ways to work and to use your medical degree, your training, your license in flexible, lucrative ways. I include training about, negotiation and malpractice and retirement and disability and life insurance and how to subsist, how to start your own physician S Corp or LLC and what those mean, and how physicians of all specialties really can live and work on their own terms.
So you've pretty much done all the hard work for us.
I sure have. I started this in 2017. I've done the legwork for sure.
You went out there and you knew what you wanted, or even if you didn't know what you wanted, you figured it out, and then you were able to create this life that you're living now.
I think I also knew what I didn't want, which is sometimes just as important.
I think that's key. Yeah, knowing what you don't want.
Right. You're either running from something or running to something. And at the beginning, I was absolutely running from the diaper chair and full-time clinical medicine. But I was. And again, I didn't quite know where I was going, but it was just not going to be there.
I'm going to see this like diaper chair forever.
I have a photo. I will send it to you. You can put it in the show notes. I have a photo for you.
I would love to. Oh my gosh. So now that you do all these things, you still find time to travel while you're creating this life?
Oh, yes. I will say so. So as I described, a lot of my locums work turned into a direct contract with a hospital. And I'm very open about, money. We don't talk about money. There's, I think we all know, very little salary transparency in healthcare and specifically in around physician salaries. So it takes each of us to change that. So as I described, my starting salary was $125,000 full-time in the pediatric ER. That was like 5 days a week. Oh, it was so much. It was so little. It was so much work, so little money. But as I slowly began to roll in, and I would roll in of all the things I've talked about, every 8 or 9 months, I would start a new venture. So it would be, a little bit of this. Okay, now I'll start that. Okay, let me take a class on that. Let's see this once a month. And it just really, I went at my own pace. I just took my time. I took weeks and months off. I was able to do that. And again, that kind of locums lifestyle, I mean, I would go to my locum site and in 1 week make $25,000 in a week. So at that point, I don't really need to work the rest of the month, at least for me at the time. I didn't need to go back home and work. So I began to just start traveling in that time. Also, I was doing a number of non-clinical things like medical writing and expert witness. So when I was on call at locums and there was nothing going on, I could be having billable hours and reviewing an expert witness case or doing a medical writing, something like that. Again, and so I started making a lot of money. And that is, in my opinion, the best way to travel. I think a number of us are at the age and experience in life where we're like, no, we want to do this well. We want to travel well. So in 2022 is when kind of things really ramped up for travel for me. I thought, you know what? I never studied abroad, as very few pre-meds can. My birthday's in August. I was like, I'm going to take August off and I want to just travel in Europe. And I did. And that was kind of the first of a long stretch of travel for me. And I now have taken 3 summers off, 6 to 8 weeks off, always over August, to travel and to see Europe. Last year, about a year ago, I went to Antarctica. That was incredible. I highly recommend. If you have any curiosity about it, please ask away. But that was an amazing trip. And this year in 2024, I went to Vietnam in March. I went to Monaco and Rome in April. I love tennis, so I went to a tennis tournament in Monaco. In May, I went to Morocco and Istanbul, Turkey. Over the summer, I went to the Olympics and then to a number of other European countries, I think 6 in total. Well, I'm going to Cancun on Thursday and then doing another long extended trip over the holidays. I'm spending Christmas and New Year's in Honolulu. Then I'm going to Japan and then Australia, New Zealand. Got to hit my 7th continent. And then I'll be back in February.
You are doing all the things.
Doing all the things.
I saw a couple of your posts when you were at the Olympics and you got to go and see the goat.
I saw the goat.
Yes, Simone Biles.
I saw her on the last day of gymnastics. That was the day after I landed. Got a last-minute ticket. It was very, very, very cool.
I love the life that you curated for yourself. I love seeing doctors doing all these, like, amazing things, and I love talking about travel. And so, yes, so what was your favorite place thus far? Because all those places sound like I need to be adding them to my bucket list.
You sure do.
So give me some inspiration.
I'll start with, let's see, best food for me. It's kind of a tie between Vietnam and Greece. Vietnam is a very inexpensive place. It is just very, very inexpensive. But if you go, I was only in the south where Saigon or Ho Chi Minh City, where the capital is, but the food was excellent, just so fresh and so delicious. But also Greece. Greece also is a country where I'd say for Europe, things are relatively inexpensive. Yeah, Greece and Portugal, in my opinion, are about similar in that way. Because you get your feelings hurt when you go to like the UK and you get that pound conversion. Yikes. But Greece also, I love Mediterranean food. Like that is just where I am happy. I've really enjoyed Greece. Just I like history and I like Mediterranean food, so it had it all just ancient right there.
Win-win.
Yes, win-win in Greece. And as I said, Antarctica, although I am from Boston, that is not Antarctica. And I am not like a cold weather extreme sports kind of vacationer. Like, please give me a 5-star resort somewhere. I love that. But it came to me and I was seeing, some people starting to go to Antarctica and I thought, you know what? It seems like it's global warming. I don't know how much longer this is going to be. So let me just go and figure it out. Most people get a cruise either from the southern tip of Argentina or Chile. I went through Argentina, spent a few days in Buenos Aires in the capital, which is pretty in the north. And it was roughly a 3 or 4 hour flight down to the very southern tip of Argentina in a city called Ushuaia. I think they call it like the last city on earth. And then there was it's a luxury cruise ship essentially that, takes you through the Drake Passage, if you've heard of it. It's bumping, I'll say that. But then after that, it's smooth sailing and then it's icebergs and it's penguins. And during the day, we would get off and get on a Zodiac or a smaller kind of raft, motorized raft that takes you to shore, walk around, see penguins. Every morning on the cruise ship was a lecture about history of exploration in Antarctica, or about the birds, or about the penguins, or about the wildlife. It was so interesting. It's definitely a nerdy thing. It tends to skew a little older. I feel like I was one of the younger people. Definitely was one of the younger people. But the food was great. It was a cruise ship. And also the most important thing is the polar plunge, which is a thing you do when you go to Antarctica and you put on a bathing suit and jump in the water. I, you black out. I wasn't going to do it, but this 75-year-old teacher named Patty, who came by herself from Long Beach, came out. She was just the sweetest little thing, maybe 4'8", and she's like, "I'm doing it." "What do you mean you're not going to do it?" I'm not. It was bullied. It was a little bit of bullying on Patty's part. But you know what? I am so glad I did it. Again, it's just a once in a lifetime. So I posted that on my personal Instagram page, but it's open so anyone can go see it. But it was a great time. It was real cold. That is real cold. Your mind leaves your body. Maybe your soul leaves your body for a second as you just kind of go down and you're like, your body's in full shock. You're like surrounded. Trust me, they are very safe. They've got a scuba person on a raft like right next to you. People are right there to pull you out, like the staff. So it's truly like no one's in any danger. Some people wanted to be attached by a rope or something. I don't know. You just got to jump. I will say you can't take a step. I'm a big fan of taking steps in your career and not labeling it leaps or jumps. But if you're going to Antarctica and you're doing the polar plunge, you really just have to close your eyes and jump.
Yeah, because I'm sure as soon as that, like, toe hits, you'll be like, "No."
That's right. You're not doing it. You're not doing it. I saw some people trying to put one foot in at a time. Absolutely not. You've got to do it. And then they pull you out and they gave us all shots of vodka and played music really loud. And it was so very fun.
What was the name of the cruise ship you went on?
This one was called the Aurora Expeditions. So there are a number of cruises, these kind of travel companies that specialize in Arctic and Antarctic regions. So it's not the Royal Caribbean, Norwegian, Carnival we all talk about and know about. These are dedicated to like the North Sea and very, very, very south. So I know they're National Geographic. I know that they do cruises. Again, the crowds tend to be into birds. They tend to be, again, a little older. That's not really cool. The bird part, not my thing, but it didn't matter. I was interested. And again, it was very fun. And I was traveling alone, but met a bunch of people who are also traveling alone. And then you just connect with people. That's also a fun thing that's been happening is that you meet people like you when you do things like this. So I met other people who just went to Antarctica by themselves. And turns out you probably have something in common with someone like that. Met, a travel agent who was coming from the UK. I saw her last summer when I was in London. I met another guy who was from New Zealand. I'm going to see him when I go to New Zealand in a couple of months. So you connect with people. A few summers ago, that first summer I traveled alone in Mallorca, I met a woman from Croatia by the pool. I met a woman from Switzerland at a jazz club. I met a Hungarian woman from Budapest on a tour. All that to say, each of these women exchanged Instagram with them, kind of lightly kept in touch over the year. And then the following summer, when I was in Europe again, they all invited me to just, come to their city and hang out. I got my own hotel, but they would show me around. I'd go to a family birthday party. The world is such a good place. I just love that I've been able to add to my time on this earth with travel. I wouldn't want to do anything else.
And so before you started, locums and doing all these different things, were you traveling like this?
Oh gosh, no. There's no way. You can't. I mean, I work maybe 8, 9 months a year. 9-ish, I'll say ish. So no, this life would not be possible working any type of full-time job. Come on, we get 2, 3 weeks vacation a year, right? And max, absolutely not. Whereas if you're locums, listen, you're doing, and again, able to negotiate. You will not be given high rates generally. You have to negotiate. That is so key. We think things will be handed to us and this life will be handed. It won't be. But we as physicians are kind of like domesticated animals, right? We've just been in cages since infancy in our careers and don't know how to live without, again, being spoon-fed. Many of us are so unhappy and we're belaboring and lamenting the fact that we weren't taught things. And I'm here to say you can still learn them. We're not on this earth very long. We need to make the most of it and live big lives. We can. We should, right? Yeah, locums changed everything.
There's Dr. Naomi. That's your prescription to travel right there.
Yeah, it's a full-time clinical job. Absolutely not. I'd say, to anyone listening, there's no limit to per diem contracts. That's a great place to start. Just going down on your clinical time is the way to start. And whether it's you're going down to 0.8 or 0.5, that's maybe consider a quick locums thing, a one time, see if you like it. And then maybe get a few per diems in town if you're nervous that one won't pay enough or give you enough shifts. There's no limit, okay? There's no non-competes with per diem contracts. So you could have contracts with multiple in town and just say, hey, I'm available. You'll probably get far more work than you want, but it'll be there. If you need to make a lot, if you want to take a week off, weeks off, months off, you can.
Right. This life of abundance.
Exactly. We have the scarcity mentality, again, groomed into us that if we step away, if we leave, there's nothing else. There's nothing else we can do. And not only can you work in different clinical settings, you can, as I've described, work in so many non-clinical settings as well. This specific summer of 24, I was working on an expert witness case. I've been doing this work for about 4 years, and this is the very first case that went to trial went to court. Not trial, but it was a court. This was not malpractice. I just want to always say, we as physicians think that physician expert witnesses are only used and needed for malpractice cases. That is not true. These are often civil cases where it's just liability. Sometimes if you're a pediatrician, it could be child abuse, but it's rarely, I'll say less than 30% of cases have to do with malpractice. Anyway, this case went to trial. I had already booked my trip to Europe this summer. So I'd been working on this case since January. In June, mid-June, they tell me about a court date in August, and I'm saying I won't be in the country. And they said, well, we could do this through Zoom. And I said, that will be fine. So I was able to charge my hourly rate of $700 an hour as I testified one night in Vienna, Austria, and the next night in London. And over the course of the summer, just kind of, doing some work for the case as I was on a bus or in an evening in or testifying. Over the summer, I earned over $20,000 while I was traveling on vacation, effectively paying for the trip and then some. So the possibilities really are quite tremendous for all of us if we just start thinking out the box and recognizing that these opportunities exist.
Yes, well, even right now, I feel like you're blowing my mind with all of these gems. And, when I've thought about these things, they come up, doing veteran exams and expert witness work. And you hear about it and you're like, oh, maybe that's for someone else, but it's not for me. And I think, again, with expert witness work, malpractice always, is a thought that crosses our mind because you're like, oh, I don't want to testify against, a colleague. And, there's always that thought. But I had a chance, well, not quite expert witness work, but I had a couple of subpoenas that came through like last year for not anything that I did. It wasn't against me, but it was just, hey, we need you to come and tell us about your medical record. Basically, read your medical record verbatim on, camera. And they didn't issue the subpoena properly. I'd never had any, experience with this before, so I reached out to the company lawyer, and they got involved. He's like, "Yeah, so how much do you wanna charge?" And I'm just like, "I don't know." So I gave them some ridiculously low number, and I was like, "Okay." And then they were like, "Alright, sure." So I was like, "Oh, they're gonna pay me for that? Alright, cool." So then it happened again, like, twice in, like, 1 month, which is, like, so random because I've been practicing for, like, 10 years and never had anything like this happen. And I was like, "Oh, okay." So I, upped my rate, and they were like, "Okay." And I was like, "Oh, they're really just gonna pay me for that?" So
That's right. And sometimes if they respond too quickly with yes, you're like, shh, and not go high enough. I want it to be so high that there's a hesitation before they agree. That's what I want.
right, right. Well, now I know.
Let me say it, physicians should not be charging less than $500 an hour for any expert witness to any attorney ever. Honestly, and I mean, clinically, they throw around some real low numbers. I do not work for less than $200 an hour clinically ever anywhere if it involves my medical license. So if anyone comes at me with the rates that they love to offer doctors, specifically pediatricians, I'd had as low as $62 an hour. Those are funny numbers to me. I absolutely will not do those.
And I think it's important that you said that because I think a lot of times we don't talk about money and we're not transparent in medicine and we don't share with our colleagues. Like, it's like, well, how much do you want to charge? Well, I don't know because no one's talking about it. So I'm sure like people who are listening are going to really appreciate that. Hey, there's a number. This doesn't have to be your number, but just realize that the ceiling is very, very high. It's probably a lot higher than what you're thinking.
It stings the first time you try to say a big number. It really does. You're just like, 500 hour, is that okay? And like, you just have to, it's hard the first time you do it. It gets easier every single time, I tell you.
And then you can fund all these amazing trips like Naomi.
Exactly. I just submitted an invoice before we started this podcast, this recording, for $4,200 for a report I did for a lawyer earlier this week. So there's so much money out there. We've been made to feel like we don't deserve it, that good doctors who aren't in it for the money would never do anything like this. And that's not true. A lot of, as we've said, a lot of money in healthcare on our backs, on our labor. And this is truly how this field operates. And quite frankly, can have so much more impact on healthcare farther from the bedside and farther from clinical care. So I feel I can pick up clinical medicine if I want to or not. More recently, I've been doing less of it, but it'll always be there.
He'll always be there. So you make a lot of money.
Yeah, I sure do. So I'll say, wait, let me say this part then. I started off $125,000 a year. This year, I'm closing a little over $500,000 this year.
Wow. So, and you know what? It's interesting because I'm in emergency medicine, but initially I thought I wanted to do pediatric emergency medicine, and I had debated going the peds route versus the emergency medicine route. And definitely one of the reasons I didn't go is because I wanted to do adults and children. But another thing that comes into play is like I've got loans to pay for, and if I become a pediatrician and I don't become a pediatric emergency medicine doctor, like what's my salary going to look like? And how am I going to, live the life that I want to lead? And again, in medicine, you don't talk a lot about finances because, we're taught that we're supposed to give, give, give. And you do it out of the kindness of your heart. And we do. We love our patients. We love taking care of people. We love, being able to assist with, helping others. But at the same time, like, I think we should be able to be compensated for our work. And we do incur a lot of expenses and a lot of debt over the time that we go through training, and we sacrifice a lot. And there's this kind of stigma associated with doctors wanting more or feeling like they deserve more. And I don't think that's something that should exist.
Well, it's a pendulum swing from the quote unquote glory days, if you hear some of the old timer doctors talk about it, of the 80s and early 90s, where that was the case. They just were earning, many millions, I'll say. And that was the assumption in general. And of course, there have been many changes in healthcare. And so we've now swung the entirely other direction where we've been made to just be like, hey, can I just get enough to live and pay my loans? And And they're like, well, you're going to have to take more call if you if you want basic living expenses. And doctors who, again, we're not given the tools to negotiate or to advocate for ourselves, very much by design, so that, we just don't feel like we can ever talk back. And we don't feel like what am I going to do? Go back to school to be an engineer? I'm here now. I guess this is the job I have to take. This is the area I live in. I've got this mortgage and these kids. And we just feel so, so, so trapped. But we're not. We have options.
We're not trapped. And so, yeah, like I feel like I've come a long ways from having that mentality of feeling trapped, but it kind of seeps back in occasionally. And you're like, okay, well, I am kind of stuck. Or maybe those things that I've been telling myself aren't true. So I love that you're here telling us, hey, it is true. And I'm seeing the possibilities. I'm seeing solo travel and I'm seeing expert witness work in my future.
Please, all of it, all of it. It's all possible. And I'll just say this, you can try these things. So it doesn't have to be in sequence. A lot of people want, no, I'm going to do this and then I'm going to do that. I get it. We're orderly, we're scientific, all of these things. First of all, you do not need an MBA. You do not need another fellowship. You do not need another residency. These are things that your medical license alone can allow you to do.
Yes, I hope you guys are hearing this. I hope you're borrowing from her inspiration and from all the things that she's done and realizing that these are possibilities that exist for you too. It's not just Naomi, it's not just that one doctor who does it. Like, it's an opportunity that's available to you too if you allow yourself to explore that possibility.
Just know it's possible. And I'll just close with saying, you have permission. When I'm asked, what's the biggest impediment to doctors that I've found in starting and exploring new things, permission is a big part of it. And it sounds so simple, but we like permission. We want to be allowed, and we need someone to tell us we're allowed to do things. It's just, again, we started this process in our early 20s. We were kind of kids still, and we are used to this hierarchy and patriarchy of ascending in someone. Okay, now we're a senior, okay, but who's next above us? Who gave us a certificate or degree that allows us to do the next thing? And so if you're looking to transition out, a lot of us are looking for that permission from our boss or from our medical director or from our chair. You will probably never get it from them. You will never. And so if that is important, I say, listen, doctors don't need permission, but we need permission. So I'm here to say, if you are listening and you're wondering, can I? Well, am I quote unquote allowed to? Yes, you are. And yes, you have permission. Please know there are no rules to this career. There's no rules that say you have to stay full-time forever. Absolutely. And there's no rules to say if you leave full-time clinical medicine, you can't ever go back. But you'll be happy with what you find on the other side.
So this is your permission to choose what's right for you, to choose a life that you want to create, to choose something that's not what you decided 20 years ago when you decided that you were going to become a med student, go through med school or whatever the health professional school that you pursued. Like, you have permission to do something more. Your worth is not determined by what you do. Your financial life can change if you decide that there is something else out there for you. And so, yeah, just knowing that those opportunities exist, I think is the hard part, because if you don't know it's out there, then you don't know where to go. And so I do have to ask you one last thing, because you've talked about travel and you've talked about, how you've been able to curate this financial picture for yourself. Do you travel with points?
I do sometimes. I really do. So I use my Amex Platinum card. I'll say, just a side note, when you work as an independent contractor like I do, so I'm not on a W-2, all of these things I've discussed are all 1099 income, which I love because I have my own S Corp. In the state of California, doctors have to have an S Corp. But as a result, that S Corp also, comes with an employee ID number, which is effectively my social security number for my business. And I have a business credit card. That was a long way of saying, oftentimes, for all these expenses and traveling for work and boards and certifications and licensing fees, all of those can go, and those are business expenses. So you can earn a lot of points that kind of go through your business, but you can use them, of course, for your own travel and for your own benefit. So yes, I often will travel on points. When I was doing so much locums, there was a Hilton in town, and I was being reimbursed for my stays. So I hit maybe 1 million Hilton points at some point. Like, it's nice. It's very, very nice. But I often do use my Amex Platinum card, and I book a lot of travel there. Sometimes I kind of can move points around. but there's a lot of perks. That card has a very high annual fee, but if you spend some time on the website and learn all of the rewards and kind of, 200 off your stay here or 200 off your stay here and 200 credit here, you recognize, okay, if I'm using these things, this fee is nominal, but I'm still getting access to lounges. Oh, airport lounges, game changer. You need I would not be able to keep up the pace of travel that I do if I did not have access to airport lounges. I'm now at a place, I'm very blessed. I pretty much exclusively fly business class, which is just, these are long haul flights, right? And I don't want to get to Paris and then be so cramped and tired that I have to go straight to sleep and I lose a day, right? So I now, in a place, and it took time. It took time to get there. But it's like if I'm reviewing an expert witness chart at a rate of $600 an hour, well, that sounds like a business not a business expense in terms of flight, but I want to be clear. I want legroom. I want to be able to sleep. I want the ice cream sundae cart coming by, which happens in Delta One. I want, someone constantly attending my wine glass. That's who I am now. That's the person that I am, and I really like her. And that is just, again, something that has come over time. I'm 41 years old. I finished residency 10 years ago. I had debt like all of us. I went to state medical school. I still had almost $200,000 in debt. And I was a pediatrician. We all know that we peds live at the bottom of every physician reimbursement or physician salary list. So I say all those things to say, there is always a path from where you are to where you want to be. And it doesn't have to be just someone else's journey. We all see everyone on Instagram and social media thinking, oh, they're good. They've got it figured out. They must have a wealthy spouse. Their grandfather invented styrofoam. They have generational wealth. I don't know. And some people have all those things, and great for them. But if that's not your story, that's okay too. You can build your life the way you want it from wherever you are.
Well, I love that you've rewritten your own story and that you were here to share all these things with us. Truly appreciate you coming on the show today to talk to myself because I learned a lot from you as well, but also with my guests who are really going to benefit from having this conversation. I know that there are going to be people who are going to want to reach out to you. How can they find you?
You can find me at doctoringdifferently.com. And there's a lot of information, free information there, guides for residents, for medical students, introduction to a number of these money makers, I call them, but also information about taking the Doctoring Differently Academy digital course, which is an absolute game changer for doctors of any specialty. So there's enrollment and tuition information there. But you can find me on social media, Instagram, Doctoring Differently, Twitter X, if you're still over there, at Doc Differently. But if you Google Doctoring Differently, you'll just see me everywhere. I'm loving this. I trademarked Doctoring Differently at the advice of a friend, and I'm so glad I did. But that's me navigating this kind of business entrepreneurial world and realizing I can. And I'm blessed to live in this time in history where, we have so much access to information everywhere. So, just because you weren't taught it doesn't mean you can't learn it. And I might be a little ahead of you, but it just took a step. It was a step after step. So just start today, start now. The best time to start is right now. And then the next best time to start will be the next time you think I should start. So please reach out, find me on social media, say hey, send a DM. I'm looking forward to connecting with doctors of all specialties all the time.
You're also going to be doing a conference in April.
I'm speaking at a few conferences, and I'm going to be posting on my website about my upcoming conferences. One is virtual in January. It will be through SoMe Docs about physician leadership. I'm going to give a talk about how doctors can work less and earn more. So, spoiler, you probably heard some of the ways I'm going to talk about them just in the past hour we've been talking here. In March, I will be speaking at the Women in Medicine CME conference, which is a cruise on the French Riviera. So you should definitely come to that. That combines all of the things I love, as you can tell. So I'll also give information about that upcoming conference. And then I'll be speaking at the Flex Med Staff Annual Conference in Las Vegas. That is April 13th to the 16th. And I'll be talking more about independent contracts for doctors. But Also, how to supplement with non-clinical jobs too. It's a lot easier to negotiate a high clinical contract when you know that you can make 10,000, 20,000 a month remotely from home doing non-clinical work. It makes you a very powerful negotiator. So I want all doctors to kind of have a few non-clinical things in their bag because you're not going to be accepting lowball offers for call, for clinic, if you know you can be earning so much more at home. So I want all doctors to kind of have all of that ammunition so we can go fight these battles.
Well, it sounds like I might be signing up for another course soon.
I hope so. Would love to see you inside. We have a great community. But yes, doctoringdifferently.com. Thank you for having me, Dr. Downs.
And thanks for being here. And I'll make sure to post all that information in the show notes for you guys so that way you know how to find Naomi on Doctoring Differently. You can follow her on Instagram. You can find her on her website. You can see her at all these conferences, which we'll also get the dates for and post so that way you can make sure to attend. So if you're listening on Apple or Spotify, make sure that you leave a 5-star review so that way other people can find our podcast and listen and learn all these amazing things as well. Make sure that you're following along in the Doctor's Lounge on Facebook. We have a prescription to travel MD, the Doctor's Lounge, where physicians and dentists and other doctors and healthcare professionals can join and hear about all these opportunities. You're following us on Instagram. I'd love to hear from you there as well. We also have YouTube now, so that way if you're a visual learner and you wanna see all of these things and or just have it playing in the background, listen to all these amazing things that are available to you, you can find us there. Thanks again for listening, and, we'll see you next time.